Hi everyone, it is my pleasure to have you join us today for the XPRIZE Connect Future of Learning Lab. My name is Brianne Ward and I'm the project specialist for the XPRIZE Connect team. I'm truly honored to introduce this dynamic panel of thought leaders dedicated to empowering others. Today we'll talk about the power of gaming and the impact of games as effective tools in learning resilience, forming social communities, and the potential of video games to motivate and create transformative experiences in learning, health, and social-emotional development. In 2020, we've seen a worldwide epidemic cripple our economy and hold the lives of millions of people and ultimately change our proximity to one another. James McGonigal predicted in 2010 that if we reach a critical mass of gaming hours, we can solve the world's biggest problems like climate change or poverty. And it's estimated that 2.6 billion players play hours on end to save virtual worlds today. So it raised the question, why are we not further along in using games to address issues like mental health? This panel of experts here today are all working on using games to empower people to build skills in virtual worlds they can apply in real life. I'll begin with introducing each of our panelists who will tell them a bit about their work, and then we'll jump into a discussion exploring the potential of gaming and social emotional health. Dr. Kecia Waddell is the Executive Director for the Center for Blockchain Studies, where she supports the applied understanding of new and emerging technologies. Dr. Kecia Waddell, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and I am so pleased to be a part of this inaugural experience with XPRIZE. Let me just tell you a little bit about the Center for Blockchain Studies. We essentially are we've called ourselves where the blockchain education meets wealth building opportunities. The Center for Blockchain Studies is the forward-facing education arm of Black Blockchain Consultants, which is a network of blockchain novices and seasoned professionals who collaborate to understand blockchain technology, where it's headed, how we can profit from the $3.1 trillion industry. And we basically are trying to recognize the power, and potential of blockchain. And we are basically using our network to educate, empower, and equip our members for the greatest wealth transfer since the creation of the internet. You might be wondering what blockchain is and how it kind of fits in here. Blockchain is a distributed, synchronized database containing validated blocks of transactions. And relevant to this discussion, it's important to note that the strength of blockchain technology lies in its consensus protocols based on game theory mechanics, along with peer-to-peer networking and cryptography. The three work together to enable secure, transparent, immutable, reliable, and validated transactions of value on the internet. Transactions that are of a digital nature, like photographs and video, songs, currency, and even academic credentials, or even of a intangible asset type like patents and trademarks and intellectual property, and then even as well as real assets like real estate property, gold, art, and that's all once it's tokenized to represent a symbol of ownership backed by a legal system. But anyway, it's all made secure and honest by the incorporation of cryptography and game theory. And game theory works to incentivize the collaboration of good behavior and of anonymous nodes that are distributed globally for the common good of the network. So in a purely decentralized blockchain network like a Bitcoin that you might be familiar with, cryptography and game theory is critical to making the actions of bad actors not even worth the effort. So that's how blockchain kind of fits in there. But beyond my involvement in the Center for Blockchain Studies, that is after my full day job, which is actually being a special education teacher in a public school setting in the suburbs. And in my classroom, I am known, in my actual district, I'm actually known as a person who integrates technology for transformative teaching and learning experiences, which include high-tech kind of gaming kind of things that I bring into my classroom and learning experience, to just reimagining, normal kind of games or gaming techniques in the classroom, just to deepen my students' understanding. So I look forward to speaking with this esteemed panel of folks who I know have experiences and probably tools that I would love to use in my classroom, to tell you the truth. So I look forward to that discussion. Thanks.
Next, we have Rosemary Lockhurst, who is a writer, technology entrepreneur, and award-winning game producer. You may know her from her work on Shadow's Edge, a multiple award-winning mobile game. As the producer and narrator, she's helped young people find their inner ninja. Thank you for joining us, Rosemary.
Thank you very much for having us here, and I'm honored to be amongst these ladies. To go a little bit deeper into what we do with Shadow's Edge, we help young people that have had some kind of hardship in their life, be that a chronic illness or, like now with what's going on in the world, COVID and others, build resilience through our game. The game is based on narrative therapy and on artistic expression, and it's an adventure game where you have to save a city that has been hit by a storm. And you do that by answering therapeutic questions that you find in the game, and by painting, spray painting in the game, and sharing your art with others in a safe community. So the game is free. We're a nonprofit, and we just want to help as many young people as we can to build strength and to build emotional resilience.
Amazing, amazing work. Next, joining us today is Jessica Murrey. She is the CEO and co-founder of Wicked Saint Studios, a media company designing crazy fun interactive story games that happen to prompt behavior change and real-world action. So happy to have you here with us, Jess.
Hello, hi everyone. It's so great to be here with XPRIZE and with these fabulous women around me. So a little bit more about Wicked Saint Studios. So like you said, we create interactive story games that are wickedly fun and actively good. So get out and change the world good. And so within our interactive story games, you're able to practice playing the hero and dealing with conflict, and then we'll prompt you to actually do something in real life. So you get to play the hero and then become a hero in real life. Right now, our next game that's coming out that we're currently working on is called Pathways. So imagine Riverdale meets Game of Thrones, and that's what's happening in Pathways. So again, interactive story game on your mobile phone, hopefully be available for young people very soon. It's a young episodic adventure game, and all of our games are really based on conflict, and that's because my partner and I, we've spent the last 7 years in peace building. And I do social change communication training. So that's where I'm training young activists all over the world in how to create strategic messaging, storytelling, and even gameplay to start shifting attitudes and behavior. And we have what we call the tattoo method, which is all about having an audience-centered approach to really how to tap into your audience's identity and so that they identify with your characters and your messages and your gameplay. So how to take young people on a real-life hero journey, and that's what we're all about here at Wicked Saints.
Our last panelist today is Aydah Palmer. She's a professor of history at the University of Chicago, studying pre-modern European thought, history books, reading, censorship, and information control. It is a pleasure to have you join us today.
Thanks. So in terms of games, that's my kind of other hat from my historian hat, which is my science fiction novelist hat. Being the author best known for the Terra Ignota series. But I've been using gaming both in history teaching and now in science fiction teaching. So for a number of years I've used text-based and face-to-face live-action role-playing to teach history. I'm best known for my papal election simulation, which for 2 weeks every year fills campus with people dressed in long cardinals' robes and wandering around campus with swords, and everyone knows it's because they're learning history. But for the pandemic, the university has approved a project of mine called Exoterra. in which I'm creating an online text-based collaborative research community via Discord, in which all of the students from across all different disciplines in campus are pooling their research to design a new civilization to be built on a terraformed exoplanet. And so from our planetology and planetary science labs, we have the details about the planets that they're looking at in the new solar system. And all the different disciplines have to pool their resources to do it. So the economists have to design economic systems, the oceanography students have to design the ocean biosphere, the law students have to design the new legal system, and it's allowing all of the students, hundreds of them in many different classes, to do collaborative research toward an aspirational and constructive project, which is building morale and community during the separation of COVID. So a great example of how real research within a gaming sphere can be used to facilitate collaboration and community.
All right, thank you all so much. You all do such amazing work. We have some concrete examples of games that can impact learning, health, and resilience from all of you. And so a question for the panel, what do you think is the true potential of gaming for learning social emotional skills?
The true potential of games? Rosie, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So we've had this question when we wanted to translate our book into something digital, and we looked at, what can we do to create a product that is digital and that's comfortable for the next generations. And gaming is just so powerful because it has a few values, I think, within games that you can't really match. And play, for example, has been used for, hundreds of years in psychology. Just nobody has taken it digital so far. And I think just that method of really being able to create experiences that people can go through, they can experiment with. You can't really kick your brother under the table, well, at least not more than once, right? But in a video game, you can practice that, and you can get better at it, and you can take those skills back into real life. And I think that's something where gaming has a lot more potential than we see nowadays, to really teach people certain things, not just procedures and processes, but really teach them things about themselves and have them experience and practice that. I don't know how you ladies see that.
Well, I wanted to add to that, actually. Yeah, I know, working with my students who have, clinical disabilities, to include the learning disabilities, reading and that kind of thing, I have to say that when they are engaged in gaming, they absolutely tap into almost what a sixth sense, I would say. They make sense of what's going on. They engage so deeply, which we understand that's where learning even begins. You bring in your existing knowledge and and layer on new information. But the biggest thing I see in terms of the impact with gaming, particularly in the traditional classroom setting, and I'm talking K-12, K-12 serves a certain type or a profile of a student very well. If you think of the bell curve kind of situation, there's that set of kids who are going to do well no matter what. And then, of course, there's a kind in the middle, which they kind of make it, they don't. And then, of course, the folks on the tail end who are just, this is not going to be the right setting. Gaming allows for everyone to show their expertise and to be what it is they want to be, in a safe place. As much as a lot of times educators attempt to make their classroom a safe place to, fail, which we know is a part of learning, it's not a safe place, even if the teacher, he or herself is very, empathetic and caring, you got the whole set of peer pressure and such like that those dynamics that go on in a classroom. So when you're able to take on a persona inside of a gaming situation, and I'm not even really just referring to a digital space, but just even when you're able to role play and really take on a persona, whether it's digital, offline or online, people really get into it. I mean, I see how people change behaviors just at You know, at Halloween time when they're able to put a mask on, they become a whole nother person. You know what I mean? Do you see that kind of behavior, Aydah, like on your
In the classroom? Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, on the campus
After the role play, exactly. You know, the role play that I do in my Renaissance course is in the midpoint of the class. So they've already been in class for a couple of weeks. Then there's this moment where they take on different roles and they become different people and they have to negotiate and betray each other and help each other and invade France or not invade France, whatever they decide to do. Afterward, they know each other's names. Afterward, the balance of who speaks in the classroom changes totally so that it evens out. And a lot more students who didn't speak before do, and the students who were sort of the hyper enthusiastic, hyper engaged students who tend to dominate the conversation, instead are eager to hear what their peers want and address more of their question to each other. You know, oh, you were King Charles when you did this, why did you do it? Instead of it being between them and the teacher. It's amazing how much, and another great example of this, it lingers. So that this year, as COVID shut the classrooms down and shut the campus down, it was the students who got to know each other through that role-playing game, who kept in touch, formed an online community, supported each other, had the emotional and friendship resilience to cope much better than the students in other courses, because they had that experience of having tried together, failed together, planned together, and accomplished something together, or gone down in flames if they were the losing faction. But even that is an accomplishment, because of course in a game, as I stressed to them, what your goal isn't to win, your goal is to create an awesome experience for everybody. And so if you're the person who's going to go down in flames, that is a great achievement too, so long as the going down in flames is exciting and dramatic.
Oh my gosh, this is so interesting, you guys, because in peace building we use role playing a ton, and just in, you know, more to say, like, if you're in the field, like, what would you do in this situation? We also use it for violence prevention training. And so I went to this one violence prevention training where they never told you what to do. They just had you read through scenarios. Okay, this is what's going on. What would you do? And it's so powerful. And again, what you're talking about with experience, like, we know that behavior change doesn't happen by giving someone information. It happens through experiences. And that's something that we can give through gameplay, through stories. And it's one of the reasons why I train storytelling in so many places, is that, you know, you can kind of vicariously have an experience through somebody else. But through gameplay, you can be that main character. You can decide how to respond in a situation and then safely experience the consequences of that behavior. You know, when we're talking about something that's like real life type of things, as well as what, you know, we really address in our interactive story games, is like, okay, what do you do when a bully's coming at you? What do you do if a bully's coming at someone else? What do you do if someone's saying something really racist and hateful? If you respond in an aggressive way, the chance of retaliation is really high. If you respond passively, you become a bystander and you become vulnerable. But between passive and aggressive, there's all these other ways you could respond. And wouldn't it be great if you could practice those responses in a safe environment, where you can still get that feedback that you need, but you don't have to experience that embarrassment or being horrified or paralyzed in a moment when it happens in real life. And that's what we found what led us to interactive story games was actually, in the beginning, we started with just having a gamified app where it asked you to go and do missions in real life. And we found that the youth didn't have the self-efficacy. So they didn't believe in their own ability to accomplish their goal. And that lack of confidence, so social cognitive theory says that self-efficacy is the #1 indicator whether someone will take action or not. And these youth wanted ways to practice dealing with conflict, having these tough conversations, what to do in these situations before being asked to go be a hero in real life. Rosie, do you also find find this kind of thing with the students that you're working with that like are looking for some kind of experience, or is it something different where they're looking for an escape or something else?
So I think because of how we advertise the game in the App Store, they are trying to actively learn something. And in our case, because it's mental resilience, what people come to us for is self-care or self-help. And so they do know what to expect when they get into the game. I think one of the things, the combination of really being able to immerse yourself in a game such as our game Shadow's Edge, where you have a different world, different characters, they don't really look like humans, there are things that really give you that suspension of disbelief that video gaming can bring. But we then combine that with really proven therapeutic processes that take them through what they're going through and actually really teach them something about how they react and how they process certain situations. Let's say, for example, with COVID now, we've seen a lot of our players really ask these questions about, isolation and how they deal with it. And then we encourage them via challenges within the game to actually reach out to people. That takes them back into real life, where they also practice what they did in the game, what they practiced in the game, and they take that back to their own life. And I think that's something that we see a lot. So they do know what they're coming for. We do give them that clear experience. And as Aydah was saying too, there's a bit of role play in there. We're a first-person game, but there's a bit of role play in there because you're the savior of the city. And you have that power to actually make the decisions necessary to save that city. And to do that, you have to dig deep into yourself and really talk about what you're going through. And that's the basis of narrative therapy that they take back into real life. Dr. Kecia, how do you see that working out?
Oh, I was really just thinking, I know we were talking about digital gaming a lot, but I'm really what I'm seeing. I'm thinking about my daughter actually. As you guys were talking, she had an experience, a collaborative experience in her first year of college, where she was supposed to kind of exchange different things with different people who she never met before. I forget it's a very, very famous study. I was trying to think of what it is, but anyway, she was very reflective. She realized that she really needed to kind of, scale up her social skills. She felt a little insecure asking people questions, and that was something she wanted to kind of develop. And as the game went on, because I guess there were so many of them doing this game, that people were starting to get a little more comfortable with people coming up to them and asking for exchange, or it's kind of a barter thing or something. I forget how it goes. I'll have to look into it. But anyway, she realizes that she started to be a little bit more conscious of her surrounding. You know how students and people nowadays have earbuds in their ears all the time, and they're kind of in their own world. She would have to kind of overhear conversations, because I guess she had to find certain things, and when she'd overhear different things, she would approach the person to talk. And so anyway, that she came away just really feeling like she really needed to increase her skills just from that experience. And again, that was a very large, typical lecture study kind of course, and the outcome of it was so much more than just the task, and it really affected her to date. Now she's a second-year college student, but yeah, I really do see that being able to go into to gamify instruction really allows us to cover so many learning outcomes and necessary skill development that and putting them in isolation just doesn't happen. There's just we know the 21st century requires critical thinking skills, and all of that kind of thing goes on, just simultaneously in a gaming situation, from what I understand. And even with the digital ones, I see how I have a set of twins, and a lot of times they'll be in their very separate rooms, and I hear them, this conversation going on, but they're not even in the same room, but they're interacting through a game, and it's just interesting to me. So it truly does create, oddly enough, even though they're right there, it does create community. I have another girlfriend who's 52 like myself, and she does the game with the words or whatever with other people. And I mean, it really does bring in community where you would think it's kind of that negative perception of some lonely person in the basement playing games kind of thing. It's hardly that. It is definitely much more positive.
Yeah. And on that point, that connects to something I'd wanted to bring up which I think is one of the elements that tends to be under-tapped in digital gaming, and also in what one might call big budget gaming, because there's lots of small-scale indie gaming that makes use of it, which is the power of generating your own words rather than just words. Most of the role play that happens in large-scale digital games is you get to a point where there's a choice, and you have a palette of 5 pre-written answers. The good answer, the medium answer, the mean answer, and the you can only do this because you joined the cult of the cat god answer, right? And you pick one of those 4, and you can have very interesting narrative trees from that, but it's a different thing from generating your own words. Whether you're generating your own words via speech or via text typing. And there are a number of games and formats that even a very large-scale digital game can tap. So, for example, a really neat format for a very simple moment within a game is you have people that have characters, they're in a multiplayer situation, and something comes where one of them has to make a decision. One of them is the head of the space agency and just has to decide which character will be the pilot and which character will be the head of the mission control. Or you've come to a place where somebody has to make a decision as to whether to, pass a law or not. Or somebody is the judge in a trial and has to decide whether they think someone is innocent or guilty. And you can then say, okay, there's going to be a half-hour timer, and we're connecting the players directly to each other to talk, whether by text or voice, and debate this. And you have to embody your character and say the things you think your character would say in the interaction. And then in the end, a real human being makes a real human decision based on your persuasive efforts, and you've used your own words to do it. And it's an immensely powerful tool in gaming. People talk about it years later. Remember that time when we were playing the game with the space decision? You do see people doing that. And we have medical studies as well, which show that there are a lot of different neurochemicals in the brain, but there are some that we associate with fight or flight reactions, sort of stress chemicals. The stress chemicals that are generated by living in COVID, the stress chemicals that are generated by trauma or anxiety, the stress chemicals that are generated, in fact, by some forms of action gaming. Because when you're doing a really awesome simulator of being chased by terrible monsters, your brain is also, in addition to being filled with fun, being filled with stress chemicals, which can do damage and can linger in your mind a long time after you finish playing the game in a way that we think might be damaging. They've monitored these chemicals lingering in the brain for up to 2 hours after playing a game or watching a film. If you have a conversation with another human being, they go away in 15 minutes.
Wow.
The power of just human interaction is so therapeutic. And so that can be integrated into any game just by making it possible for the human beings to create their own words and interact, whether as the whole game or whether as a small node within a game with many other structures.
And maybe if I may add to that, I think that a lot of these mainstream games at the moment, they go by a certain formula of what a game should be like. Which is a lot of it is, giving people multiple choices, as you say, or, you either do this or you do that. There's limited option. We've opted to go for a different way where we try to encourage people to create their own diary and create their own narrative and their own story by writing about what's happening to them in real life, and then take that experience back into the game and share it with others. And I think with what you said, Aydah, is it's very powerful if you then, through what you are going through and what you are thinking, especially if you're like stressed out or anxious or depressed, it's very powerful to then connect others through that game in that world that is not as realistic yet as your real life, and you can test those things out and you can experiment with them before you actually take, you know, what you've learned back into your own life and hopefully start reaching out. We've had players that said, you know, I actually did talk to my parents now. I've never done that before, and it's really rewarding to hear that they take things seriously that have been created in a game, right? And that they actually came to with their own conclusions through their own works.
And I feel like that's so important. It disturbs me so much when I hear students feel like they have to, they graduate from traditional education. They feel like now they learn what everything means. So having that connection and that deep connection, with one another and with themselves is tremendous. And I have to say too, I think that is one of the tremendous adds for gaming, is that whole idea of choice, real choice. And then particularly in the way you're talking about, Rosie, that's really dynamic to make it choice that is outside of the just choosing C as the answer mindset, kind of a thing. Yeah.
You all have noted some amazing points of how gaming can fill in gaps where other technology may fail, and particularly within the traditional or mainstream education setting. I wanted to know what you all think about using gaming to support those who have more atypical conditions, those who may fall on the autism spectrum, or those with who may have gender dysphoria and are working through gender fluidity, and how we can use gaming to improve and understand those areas, and also how we can create more acceptance within those people, and going back to this idea of resiliency.
Well, I think we've touched on it in the sense that games allow for the building of empathy, on deeper levels. Aydah, you just kind of mentioned how when you talk, when in that study, when people talk with one another, the information just kind of disappears in 15 minutes. And I think that's because
the stress chemicals, yeah.
Oh, the stress. Yeah. Oh, the stress. Oh, okay. Disregard. Then that's going to take it somewhere else. Then, Well, what I was going to get at, I misunderstood what you said then. But what I was going to get at was just the whole idea of being able to, kind of like what we all have been saying, being able to take a situation and really play it out without the danger of offending someone and what have you. I mean, I feel like the power of gaming is likened to the power of music. How music is considered the international language kind of thing. There's much that can be conveyed in a gaming situation, and depending on the purpose of the game, it could be used as quite a powerful tool, in which case, again, I feel like we really need to teach people how to evaluate things, because we're using games for good, and there might be some really some ideas that we don't want to get locked in so deeply, but we know the power of gaming, and it could go that way and in a negative way. So that's where we still need to games also play into making critical decisions and evaluating things, so that you can identify what message is really being sent. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think inclusion and representation and empathy are so important to consider when building your games. We look at of course, I'm always going to go back to like conflict and peace building, but what we tend to do is demonize the other And when you demonize the other, it makes it easier to harm that person. And also, you know, when you feel like you're under attack, it's also impossible to see the pain and suffering of others. And so that's the amazing thing about games, and more so games. I'm more even like the narrative scope of things is when you also have a really strong narrative base, you're able to identify with some of these people, and you start to form a relationship with these characters, especially if you do the whole character development and they feel real. And it goes a long way to thinking about, okay, so if you to have this person who, if they're on the spectrum, or however they may be different, being able to see them as a person, being able to interact with them, to see the ways that you interact with them and how it affects them in their life and in their happiness, is a great way that we can start building empathy and really starting to, you know, maybe you can go play the game in their shoes for a while. And and so it goes across every type of difference. And I really believe that our inability to deal with difference stops us from making progress on everything we face. And you know, and then the other thing of inclusion is, you know, whether you're creating a messaging campaign or story, people have to be able to see themselves in it. And if they don't see themselves, whether it's themselves in the language or the imaging or how they identify, then that means that whatever that is not speaking to them. You're not speaking their language. And so it's so important to have this kind of representation within games, and so kids can see themselves within the games and interact. So on kind of both sides of it, whether it's empathy for how you treat others, or being able to build confidence in who you are and that's okay, and seeing yourself represented in games, all those are really powerful tools. And again, you go down to kind of this power dynamic that you're talking about, Aydah, with, you know, when people are able to come together and collaborate together, and that social impact, how powerful that is. With contact theory is about, you know, people, it's not about helping the other, but it's about engaging them as a partner to accomplish something together. And that's when you see a reduction of fear and an increase in empathy. And that's something that these games, whether they're social games or you get to kind of, you know, dive into this world and practice stuff, there's so many different elements that I don't think that we've even tapped into all of it that can really help build relationships and lead to more inclusive society if we're conscious about how we build games. I know, Rosie, I'm really curious to hear what you have to say with all the work that you've done around mental illness and things like that, and how you've seen it kind of play out with your players.
Yeah, we do a lot of testing with our players, and we do one-on-one interviews with our players. So it's very interesting to hear back, you know, how they perceive certain things. We've had a lot of communication on our in-game platform about what's going on in the world right now with COVID and how that's making people depressed. But also, you know, we've had discussions around suicide or racism in there, and it's interesting to see that these young people, they do feel all of that, and they do want to learn something about it. It's more that a lot of times it's fear of being ignorant that stops them from actually finding out more about the other person. But go one step further, even with games, which to be fair, we don't do at Shadow's Edge at the moment, but I think that we will in the future. I think games are uniquely positioned to also have us as game developers, as industries, and how people play the game and what they play and how long they play and what choices they make and why they make those choices, to really potentially in real life be able to help them and support them better as well. So we could also use gaming as a very powerful research tool.
Agreed.
Aydah, how do you see that? Do you learn a lot from what you do in your, for example, in your real world role play games, or that you take back into teaching?
Oh, lots. I think there are several points I want to touch on in order, and starting with a through thread on inclusion and also disability. You know, relating to what you were saying and also what Jessica was saying about there being an eagerness among young people, especially, to learn about inclusion, and also an anxiety about how to be sensitive about it. To give an indication of the degree of this eagerness, I'm disabled myself. I'm a chronic pain sufferer. And a couple of years ago, when I had to miss class for a surgery, I went in front of the class and said, I'm disabled. I'm a chronic pain sufferer. I want to give you a 5-minute Q&A about it so that you'll understand why I'm missing class. They were so eager to talk about it, eager for an opportunity to ask about it, to ask how invisible disabilities broadly work, how to be a good ally, how mental illness, which is an invisible disability, versus invisible disabilities that affect the other parts of the body work, that they kept asking questions for the full hour and a half. And afterward, 13 of them came to my office hours to talk about it more. There's so much eagerness to have a space to talk about how to be a good ally. And gaming can absolutely be that. In a really valuable way, especially when it's cooperative, especially when there's a team and different people on that team have different roles. Because if this is, let's take my Exoterra project where students are designing a new planet. If there's a team that's the agriculture team, and there's one person on the agriculture team who's a microbiology specialist who knows how the microbes in the soil work, you have to listen to them when it's time to make these decisions, right? They're the expert on this. Everyone else there does plants or does consumption or something. And if that person is on the spectrum and talks in a funny way, everybody wants to listen to them, practices listening to them, right? They get to speak to other people who really care about them, feel authoritative, and be the expert. It works the same way in the historical role play where, only one person is the King of France. Only one person is the Cardinal of Milan. They have things these other people need. And it means all of the students practice really having a strong reason to interact with a person that they don't personally know who has an unusual affect. And the person with the unusual affect has the practice of, oh my God, everybody in the room is listening to me really seriously and taking me seriously. Nobody is being a jerk about this. It's a very positive experience on both ends of that, enabled by the fact that it's teamwork and everybody has something that they're the only one that contribute to this situation. It's been immensely effective in that. I want to talk a little bit about representation as well. Which is another space where, again, when teaching these things, it's very effective. So, I'm always making a point of pointing out, for example, when historical figures we're looking at are disabled, because often we hear about famous historical figures like Lorenzo de' Medici, but because his disabilities were erased in the 19th century, they tend to still be erased. And when you point out to students, not only Lorenzo de' Medici, but also King Charles of France in the period are both what we would in a modern sense call disabled. Everyone is super excited by the fact that these major figures, the King of France, are in this category, and it becomes a group, conversation. That said, in a lot of games where the characters are pre-generated, there are limits to how much you can represent. Right? Let's imagine you have your 5-person squad and you've tried to make them as diverse as possible. They can't cover everything. And even if they do cover a wide variety of things, the intersectionality won't necessarily be what a particular person is looking for. That you might have somebody who is an asexual black trans woman, and that combo doesn't appear. Like each of those attributes might appear, but they won't be together. And there are also, this is about future-proofing the utility of a game, there are axes of marginalization that we aren't thinking about yet, that have not yet moved into the forefront of discourse, that exist, right? But we're constantly expanding how many different categories we're caring about. There's much more conversation now about trans rights, for example, than there was 10 years ago. Think of the equivalent of that a decade from now, that we aren't thinking about yet, but that matters to people and will matter. When you have an opportunity for the person to design elements of their own character, to create part of the backstory themselves and have that backstory matter, not just be in their own head while they go around being a zombie hunter like everybody else, but to embody those attributes in a conversation with another person, in a set of actions, in something they write. You make it possible for your game to give representation to every intersectional combination and even to axes of marginalization that don't exist yet, right? And 30 years from now, when we have kids who are genetically engineered and feel anxious about that, and that's an axis of marginalization which doesn't exist now, your game, even if it's 30 years old, can still be powerful and cathartic for that student if you've built in the capacity to have some self-generated elements of the characters.
That is a powerful point. Oh, I love it. So there's work to do, it sounds like, in this in this space. But yeah, that's entirely powerful. I was going to mention how I think I may have started to talk about how powerful it is to take on personas, but just being yourself in your full self is more powerful. You know, and you mentioned that, Aydah. There was a statement you made about the difference between empowerment. But it was something you shared with us that really was poignant.
Lots and lots of games offer a power fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. Lots and lots of games offer you are the chosen one and you're the only one who can save the world, rescue the girl, cure the disease, defeat the dragon. Mm-hmm. You have the special whatever it is, whether it's dragon's blood or whether it's a technology or whether it's just you have protagonismos, right? You have the attribute of being the main character and everything will revolve around you and you will solve it. Those kinds of power fantasies are fun. They're narratively powerful. We've been writing them since Homer's Iliad. They're really cool. Mm-hmm. They aren't the same thing as making a person feel personally powerful. Mm-hmm. So that when they leave the game, they still feel like they discovered a power that's in them. Yes. When you persuade someone to do something, when your words do the thing, when you were the one who solved the puzzle about how do we make the agriculture grow quickly enough to feed the colony, when you used your expertise, your unique intervention, you feel empowered. You discover that you are powerful, and it's the same kinds of power you wield in real life. It's not in the game I can lift a 50-foot sword and swing it around, and in real life I can't. So I'm powerful in the game, but I'm powerless in real life. It's, I won this game by being really persuasive and by really knowing my biology. Or I contributed to this team project by being persuasive and knowing my biology. That's true of me in real life too. I'm powerful. And you feel powerful as you leave that kind of game. Yeah. Especially if it went badly. This is the last thing I'll add, and then I want to hear what others say, but there are, students come to me over and over. Nothing is more powerful than when they had a plan in the simulation. It totally failed. They were defeated. And then they had to recover. And they had to get new allies now that they've been defeated and the other king has won, right? And they have to find the enemies of that king and rally a defense and recover from setbacks. And they feel so powerful realizing, everything went wrong and then I turned it around. Yeah. And I reached out to people and I figured out the solutions and we came up with a backup plan and it didn't result in the ideal victory for us, but it ended up in a compromise in which we were okay. That is so powerful, and games can generate that. Because if one team wins and another team loses, if the story continue and say, okay, the win was the midpoint. Now that your papal candidate has failed, how are you going to recover and generate a new base of power and defense in the new situation where you didn't win the election? In the new situation where, the first colony you tried to build failed and you're building a second colony. That is so empowering in a way that no 50-foot sword or giant robot ever is, because you have to leave those behind when you leave the game. You don't have to leave behind your ability to recover from failure.
And truly,
that's so cool.
So powerful. The soft skills are what transfer. That really answers how games can build resilience that lasts beyond the gameplay, honestly.
I think it's less, the good games really make it less about power, but more about building mastery and autonomy to make the right decisions and to really, learn something and become better at whatever you're trying to achieve. And that's something that is really unique to gaming versus more traditional ways of educating. I believe, to have that in a playful manner where it's easy, where you can go back and where you can experiment again. That's something that really resonates, I think. Jessica, you were going to say?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting hearing you talk about this. 'Cause this is one of the things that we're currently working through with Pathways is that we know from some of the media behavior change, other types of media that we've used with our organization before that we had worked with. We did use like soap operas and a lot of fiction and from comic books and all this different types of fiction. And what we found was that when things were so fantasy that there was no way, like with superpowers and all this kind of stuff, that people created dissonance between themselves and what they were capable of, and they actually didn't take the skill away. And so one of the things that we're building in Pathways around this world is like we want the world, like it has to be, it's little futuristic, so it has to be cool enough where like kids want to be there, but also has to just be like you have the skills that you have and how to reward some of these different skills. So like when we have so again, everything you're saying with like, okay, like you're gonna be able to create the avatar and the main character will reflect you and your backstory. And then when you're going in through the games, instead of just having choices, you know, 1, 2, 3, we're thinking about how to kind of do this kind of thing to reflect different strengths of different personalities and some of these soft skills. And so let's say you have a certain amount of courage points and then you need to spend them on some of these choices. And so we're thinking, okay, you have these 3 kind of categories of choices. So you have like the little humor icon, because let's say, because wit can be used to cut down someone and to mock someone, but humor can also be used to de-escalate a situation. And then you have like the brain icon for those who are a little bit more intellectual, but kind of like quiet. And then you have the action icon, which is like, okay, I want to step in. And you can step into a fight and make it worse, or you can like get people around you to help surround a victim and stop it from happening. And then and then basically reward different types of traits that are powerful in different types of ways. So there's not one way to solve something. So let's say you take a gamble and choose a choice. So it costs a certain amount of points. But let's say you actually used empathy in that choice. Now we're going to reward you some points back. And then on the back side, you're actually going to have what you'll have is like your player stats. And instead of having a stat that's full of agility and strength and like all this other stuff, maybe we have some stats on like empathy and trust building and like courage and like some other things, so that and we can actually say like, this is actually your personality that we found by the choices you've made. And being able to kind of, again, build this confidence and this sense of identity of this is who I am and who I believe myself to be. I believe that I can transform relationships, I can transform society, that I have the power to do this, I have these skills. And it's, and again, everything that you're saying, Aydah, with like, we will allow, most games you have to defeat the enemy, right? Because we've been taught. Right. Someone has to lose in order for us to win. But the way that the world works, it doesn't actually work like that. If I call someone a racist, I might win my argument in that moment, but is that person any more likely to want to help me in my cause? Probably not, but that's the person I need most. And so within our game, we're going to allow you to go down the path of like defeat the other person. That's the enemy. Let's try to get them kicked out of school. Let's try to like ruin them or like whatever. And you're probably going to hate this person, and you can go down that path, but then you'll see what happens. And you'll probably actually need that person at the end of the day to solve the mystery, to solve the conflict, whatever it is. And so there's so much kind of interesting things that you can go into and you can use. And like, we're still play testing a lot of this ourselves. But again, this is how there's so many ways that you can see if you make impact with these games. You can have your baseline testing, but you can also see how choices evolve over time. And then with our game, we're going to be able to, you're going to practice these different types of behavior and techniques without it feeling hopefully very practicey. It should feel like entertainment. But build your confidence, and then you're going to be able to unlock missions to do in real life. And so we're hoping to see that some of this transfers of being more confident to be able to talk about some of these issues, and then see when they unlock them, if they will go do them in real life. And I'm really excited to kind of see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I have a couple concrete examples of exactly what you mentioned, which I'd love to say, but I'd love to hear what Kecia wanted to say first.
Oh, I think no. I just wanted to let Jessie go. I think I talked over her, so you're fine. Go ahead, Aydah.
Oh, well, you've reminded me in the first of two different things. So just where you were talking about how, in a lot of games, we're very powerful in an adversarial way, but it can be developing other kinds of skills that are very exciting. I'm in the middle of running another game right now. It's a tabletop and text-based game, but it's a really powerful and very grim game. But I mean, the players in there, I've had players, literally jump out of their chairs and bounce up and down with excitement. I've had players cry. And I have one player who, his character has achieved amazing stuff. He's re-engineered his entire country. He's literally turned himself into a god. The thing he cares most about, the player, is his friendship score with the character's best friend. He cares about that so much more than the rest because it's rich and relatable, and the best friend character is a very powerful character. He was more excited when he reconciled with his best friend than when he turned himself into a god. Which is a good example of how powerful these kinds of stories can be, which relates to a movement within the science fiction and fantasy world, which is sometimes these days referred to as hope punk. If you're used to cyberpunk and other sorts of punk, hope punk. But we've noticed that there are so many very dark narratives. Yeah. There's so much grim dark. There's so much, the conspiracy turns out to be worse than everyone thought. There's so many plots where, you're learning that there's some kind of conspiracy. What is it doing? It's doing something terrible. Narratively, it's incredibly powerful and surprising when what turns out to be happening is people are being good. And I can use some famous and some non-famous examples of this, but many people saw the film The Martian. And there's that moment at the beginning where they realize that they've left him on Mars, and we have the people at the computer seeing the pictures, and they say, well, left him on Mars. We have 24 hours to inform the American people of that, because that's our legal duty, so better prepare the press conference to reveal that we've left him on Mars. And it's really surprising, right? Because in every other story, they would cover it up. Mm-hmm. Or in the film Interstellar, where they come upon this secret compound and the secret bunker. What are they doing in the secret bunker? It's the good guys, and they're trying to save humanity. It's full of doctors and medicine. It's so surprising because that's what never turns out to be the case. And we're in a point, because narratives have been so dark, that we can tell stories that are more surprising and therefore more powerful and also more accurate by having the opposite, right?
Thank you.
And there are these observations people make about how we have so many disaster movies where after the disaster also everybody turns into a terrible person, and we have biker gangs, murdering each other. We have so many versions of the trolley problem. Whereas real life isn't actually like that. In real disasters, people tend to pool together and cook each other gumbo and help, but that's not what we depict. In real confrontations, a lot of people try to make peace and come up with a solution that isn't A versus B, somebody has to go down, that is cooperative. Even when Google was testing the Google cars and everybody's braced for the trolley problem, right? Everyone wants to ask about the trolley problem with the self-driving cars, because we're so used to the idea that the universe is going to make us make these grim choices. And then they ran millions of simulations, and it was never the correct answer to hit the pedestrian. It just isn't actually true that happens. It's always the better choice to protect everybody. That's the way the real world turns out to work. But because we discuss the trolley problem so much, because we discuss conspiracy so much, because we discuss zero-sum adversarial so much, we assume it's the way the world works when it isn't. If we tell more accurate stories where people are better, not only is it therapeutic and educational, it's also more exciting narratively. Because it's not what people expect.
It's relatable.
I love how you've touched on a preferred future state, but telling narratives that, like you said, are relatable. And Jessica, I absolutely love that you're working towards creating that preferred future state within your game, and everything you're doing with your team, to make sure that you have empathy and you have this idea, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you have this space where the player can see exactly who they are in the game, right? And applying that to that narrative Aydah has brought up about real world consequences and what will happen, that's more realistic, I think is an amazing way to, again, into that preferred future state. Rosie and Kecia, I wanted to give you both the opportunity to talk about your vision for a preferred future state as we're reaching at the top of the hour.
Well, you know what? I really wanted to tap right into what Aydah said. I'm so glad you brought that whole idea up of changing the narrative, because I do feel like that's exactly what's going on in this moment that we're living in real life. You know, I'm an African American woman, and you know, I know right now we're as a community changing the economic narrative. You know, and we're changing the narrative in a way that is much more empowering. And I really, really can appreciate what you're saying, because that's something that I notice in movies and music. You know, there's just the darkness factor just aids to the fear and everything that's going on right now. So that is so empowering. And that's one thing that was one of our questions, was to think about how it can, you know, things can be impactful beyond gameplay. That right there, being able to truly change the narrative for what's really the truth about things. It's just not a trajectory to hell kind of thing necessarily. You know, it doesn't just have to be, particularly when I know I'm here and I know most people around me are like me, who are more good and looking to do good. You know, so that was tremendous. Yeah, I'm very, very encouraged by that. And truly, even in my classroom, when I've allowed my students to just really be themselves and just add to a project. They struggle with that because of some of the things you just mentioned, Jessica, about how that the opportunities to exercise that on a day-to-day, and you know, students in K-12 setting are in school probably more, well, prior to COVID, in school more than they're with their parents and whatnot a lot of times, you know, and it has quite an impact on them. So for them to get into have an opportunity of choice, and then the choice they actually make is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. It really, really is. So yeah, very good point, Aydah.
Great. And so, Rosie, your vision for a preferred future state within gaming as it pertains to mental health and well-being, do you have any final thoughts there?
Sure. So I think that there are a lot of mainstream games now that touch on the topic of mental health, like Zelda with their suicide scene that they have. There's a bunch of them that have characters that have, certain traits like depression or other things. I would love to see more of that, but in a more accurate way, because now it's not somebody has depression or somebody's stressed out, but it's somebody's crazy. And it's less, you know, somebody has issues and feels terrible and doesn't know how to react to things, but they're mentally ill. And I think that really being able to portray these characters more accurately when we then do choose those characters, that would be something that I'd really love to see more in gaming. The other thing is that I think that there's a lot of gamers and a lot of players that want to do something good, and that's a trend really going up. We see that in our game where, you know, so many of our players actually come to us and then want to help us make the game better. So I would really love it if more of not just indie gamers, but also bigger games would actually really take that seriously and take the input of their players who are wanting to do the right thing into the game and create different narratives and stories around, real situations. I think that we can use more of the real world within gaming, so that then it is easier to take what we learn in games back into the real world. That would be my preferred future state, if you will.
Agreed. Yes.
Excellent. So as we reach the top of our hour, I'm so saddened, but filled with such gratitude that I had the opportunity to grace the stage with your brilliant minds and to be a part of this amazing discussion today. For everyone in the audience and everyone watching our live stream, I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to follow your work and that we can still continue this conversation, because as we've noted today, we have a lot of work to do, but we're getting there. So if all of you could just share maybe your Twitter handles or digital spaces you can follow and keep up to date, that'd be a great way for us to close out.
Well, I'll start. You can find me on LinkedIn at my full name, Kecia Waddell, and I'm also on Twitter at Dr. Kecia Waddell. And then certainly you can follow me on Facebook with Black Blockchain Consultants.
For me, it's even easier. Shadow's Edge is the name of the game. And around that, there's the .com for the website. You can find Shadow's Edge on Instagram, Facebook, etc. All of those, including the website, will then also lead back to me and to my profile. And we have a direct email if somebody wants to contact us. That's feedback@shadowsedge.com.
And you can find Wicked Saints. You can follow us on Twitter. It's Wicked_Saints. And on Instagram, it's Wicked Saints Studios. So you can find us there. You can find me on both Instagram and Facebook, or on Twitter as well. Jessica Murray, no space, and it's Murray with an E. And of course our website, so wickedsaints.studio. And there you can also sign up to beta test our pathways for when it comes out. And every email that goes through there, I'll see. And so, please feel free to reach out and or sign up for our pathways game.
You can find information about all the things I do at AydahPalmer.com. You can find my history information via University of Chicago's History Department. You can find my novels, starting with Too the Lightning, which is the first volume, TOO as in too much, too like the lightning, first volume of Terra Ignota. I also have a blog, Exurbe, EXURBE.com, where I blog about how history works. The most recent post is a set of healthy work habit and self-care guides customized for COVID, which I produced for my university, and which synthesize national research with my own chronic pain experience to give guidelines for what the WHO has recognized as a global mental health epidemic. And the second most recent one is about the Black Death and COVID and what we can learn about what the aftermath of COVID will be like looking at the Black Death. Answer, it's more complicated than most of the short op-eds have been giving you, which is why my version is a 10,000-word blog post. As for Exoterra, the current game where the students are creating a terraformed exoplanet, you can find that at voices.u, that's the letter U, chicago.edu/Exoterra. So voices.uchicago.edu/Exoterra. So if you email me, I will, of course, point you at anything you like, and my email is available on AydahPalmer.com. Twitter is Aydah_Palmer.
Thank you so much for joining us. And again, it's such a pleasure to continue the conversation. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been an honor.
Thank you for having us.